can lean into your own personal discomfort, say what needs to be said in a non-offensive way, the more you make the world a better place.
All right, socials, welcome. Welcome all to our Tuesday Live at 5. Great topic today. There's so much of it going around that it's worth giving it a popular header. The science of escalation and de-escalation. One isn't intuitive, the other is. How do we better understand it so we can better engage our world? Welcome all. Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. There are some core ideas that we frequently talk about at Jumpstart in our training and consulting, and I'll share those with you here as we discuss this topic. I should also say that we are aligned with some strategic partners who also have some things to say about it that are similar but different in their expression. And that, of course, includes the great Tony Blauer of the Spear System, Andy McDonnell of Studio 3, and some others. But primarily those two are really out there with a lot of messaging about the science and the psychology, the kinesiology, the neurobiology of escalation and de-escalation. I'm going to share with you the core ideas that we hold on to here and frequently revisit in our training sessions and in our consulting. First is this. There was an extraordinary amount of research done in correctional settings regarding the motivation of, let's say, aggressive behavior. We'll call that escalation. And the conclusion of that research that our psychiatric emergency response team heavily relied upon in its formation in 2013 and has been evolved to some extent in how we articulate it since then, could be condensed this way. A fundamental cause of aggression is feeling at the mercy of an uncaring system. Now, remember, this research was done in a corrections environment, multiple corrections environments. But let's take a look at that idea for a little minute, for a little bit. Let's unpack it. Feeling at the mercy of an uncaring system. Would it be safe to say that someone might not be experiencing the ability to control anything in an uncaring environment? That they are experiencing that they're unimportant in an uncaring environment? That they have no say in an uncaring environment? Think of that explanation as a fundamental cause of aggression from that body of research. Feeling at the mercy of an uncaring system. That was present in every episode of aggressive behavior that was measured. We cling to that idea at Jumpstart as a fundamental cause of escalation. What's another fundamental cause of escalation? The presentation of aggressive behavior. When a goal is experienced as it's being blocked, in other words, I'm experiencing that my goal is being blocked, or that my expectation is being violated. This research was performed on monkeys with fruit. The distinction between cucumbers and grapes, I've talked about it plenty of times. I'll briefly review it now. If you've heard me talk about this before, I would ask for your forbearance. When monkeys who enjoy cucumbers witness other monkeys eating grapes, and they have been trained to tap a prompt to receive something from a researcher, when they witness other monkeys eating grapes and they hit the prompt and they're given a cucumber, they become aggressive. the research outcomes from that were expressed as blocking a goal or violating an expectation. What's another potential reason for escalation? Science behind how we understand escalation. Tony has been a champion of this research for years, so I'll talk about it a little bit. It has to do with the suddenness and speed of stimulus that your nervous system experiences. If stimulation occurs with suddenness and speed compared to the ability to process that stimulus with more reaction time rather than less reaction time, this activates safety and risk circuitry in the nervous system. So you'll feel involuntarily high attention, auditory exclusion, narrowing of vision, which is generally associated with our limbic system activity, our survival circuitry, our fight-flight system. Well, what's the science of de-escalation, the science of it? What have we researched and studied that helps offset what we know and have studied on the science side of escalation? If we know in research that feeling at the mercy of an uncaring system is a fundamental cause of aggression, if we know that when a human being perceives a goal being blocked or an expectation being violated, that this is a fundamental cause of escalation, when we know that the startle flinch impulse, as Tony would say, which is driven by the suddenness and speed of stimulation, animates escalation, what can we do to de-escalate those situations? Well, what do we know biologically that occurs? The sensory thalamus in the brain, wired to your senses, sends signal to the amygdala that there's trouble. There's stimulation that's being encoded that's driving me as a sensory thalamus to advise you, Mr. Amygdala or Mrs. Amygdala, whichever you prefer. You need to release some neurotransmitters and hormones. You need to activate cortisol, adrenaline, glucose. We need to pull blood in from the extremities and bring it into our core vital organs. This is going to happen whether you like it or not. When we're attempting to de-escalate someone that's in this state, we are encountering a human being where substances have been produced in the bloodstream and in the brain to animate someone to escalation. We'll just use that as the title for the animated state. They're escalated. Well, the first thing that I want to do is not make things worse. I don't want my utterances or my physical presence to block a goal, violate an expectation, be sudden or be fast. You getting it now? To de-escalate, don't be the things that escalate. Don't be suddenness and speed. Don't be uncaring. Don't be the things that animate someone's nervous system to perceive you as blocking a goal, violating an expectation, presenting risk. That has to be dealt with first. So how do you do that? Well, I mean, I know you're telling me, Andy, don't be this, don't be that, don't be. How do I be? This is where we find instructions very helpful. We begin and use a lot of validation when someone is presenting escalation. What do I mean by that? I am going to non-verbally and verbally let someone know that they are seen, heard, and understood, no matter what they're presenting. Why would I do that? Why would I do that first? This person needs to be de-escalated. Why am I letting them know all of this first? Well, I want to message that they're nervous to their nervous system that I am none of the things that they are very sensitive to right now. They are sensitive to goals being blocked, expectations being violated, um, uh, perceptions that another human being is uncaring and not listening to them. And maybe they're very sensitive to the suddenness and speed of stimulation. Why would I want to be any of those things when someone is in that state? This is why we start with validation. We want to let them know I'm not here to block a goal. I'm not here to violate an expectation. I'm not here to produce an uncaring attitude. I'm moving non-verbally and verbally at a very regulated pace. I'm not presenting you suddenness or speed. I have to get around the risk circuitry that the person is experiencing before I can render any influence for them to get control of themselves. You controlling another human being is not de-escalation. Controlling the situation is not de-escalation. De-escalation is an outcome state as a result of you influencing another human being to regulate themselves. You want to call it co-regulation? Knock yourself out. You want to call it collaboration and partnership? Knock yourself out. You want to call it cooperation, which is what I think Gary renamed the highest step in the behavior change stairway model. Knock yourself out. The point being, I model and engender with this other human being self-regulation so that this person becomes willing to do that. When they know that their efforts to animate themselves have been met with, they've been seen, heard, and understood, they become willing as a consequence to calm down. Well, where's the science of that, Andy? What are you talking about in these validation statements? Well, let me give you an example. We know through research today about an active listening skill that was coined by Carl Rogers at this point, 75 years ago, approximately, called emotional labeling. We know that when the right feeling word or need word lands on a human being to help them identify their own emotional state, they might just be focused on what someone else did. That's all they're thinking. And then you begin to use some words to help them understand how they're engaging the world is landing with you. Man, it looks like you're enraged. It seems like you feel betrayed. When those words resonate with another human being, that's known as the cognitive process of reappraisal. And we know that when people reappraise, that instigates activity in the parasympathetic nervous system, and people begin to calm down. What's the science of escalation? I just spent a good amount of time describing a few ideas that I know have been researched well and we rely on within our education and consulting. What's de-escalation? First, not being those things. Second, what to do instead. Get around the risk circuitry of another human being by engaging in nonverbal and verbal activity that lets them know that they're seen, heard, and understood. That doesn't mean problem solving. That doesn't mean, well, if I just fix the environment for you, you'll be okay. That's not de-escalation. That's problem solving. What's de-escalation? Look, this is very liberating. There aren't a lot of people who are talking about this. De-escalation is not problem solving. It's about helping another human being regain control of their emotional state so they have the dignity of solving their problem later with greater mental capacity to do so. Why? Because we know that when people are escalated, their diversity of thought and expression is reduced. That's not opinion. That's heavily researched. When the limbic system is engaged in higher neurochemical activity that can be measured in a variety of scans, what isn't working as well is the neofrontal cortex. Not as much going on there. That means their diversity of thought and expression is offline or diminished. Yes, thank you for that comment. Absolutely right. You know, it could almost be argued that if you think that de-escalation excludes you, you're missing the point. De-escalation requires of yourself as much as of another human being in terms of the procedural responsibility. Now, you may not have a lot to do because this is an idea that you're committed to, you practice it, you engage in activity between crises to keep your needle pretty stable no matter what. There was a long period of time where I threw myself at things to no longer fear them. Heights, swimming, loud noises. I mean, not everybody is like that, and we're not expecting everybody to go around engaging in moderated flooding of stimulation, which is what we call that experience. You're afraid of an elevator. The way that gets dealt with at some point is that you have to start flooding your nervous system with measured parts of the experience so you can overcome getting in an elevator or not being able to get in an elevator. So the science of it is pretty clear. The hard part is the willingness to accept it and do it. Most people, at least, want to retain the right to have their own autonomy and ability to feed back on phenomena they don't like. That's entirely reasonable. If you want to de-escalate someone, that's not going to help you. Well, what happens? I'm feeling offended. Someone is saying things that are offensive to me. That's reasonable. You want to de-escalate that person? I don't suggest you start pushing back on the offensive language right away. Now, are there times where we have to set limits and boundaries? Sure. Are there high-risk encounters where we have to deal with that before we deal with anything else? Sure. You ever seen someone stuck in a command loop? Drop the knife, 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 drop the knife. Drop that piece of glass. Put the gun down, put the gun down, put the gun down. Here's what we know about that research. Telling someone what not to do is not the same as telling them what to do. For instance, if you keep using that kind of language, if you keep using racial slurs, you're going to be escorted out of here against your will. Stop. How do you think people generally feel when limits are imposed on them? It's activating to the nervous system. It's blocking a goal or violating an expectation. What if I give someone an image of something else to do that they're not able to conceptualize in the moment? What if I say to another person, hey, if you continue to use racial slurs in here, we're going to be required to move you. But if you can use safe, non-offensive language, you can stay and describe what your beef is with us. I'm now telling someone what to do instead. They get an image that's associated with getting to their goal or having their expectation realized. These aren't opinions of mine. These are things that have been thoroughly researched. What they don't come is natural to most people. They are not impulsive. De-escalation very, very seldom is intuitive. These things need to be trained. Escalation, we got that down pretty well as human beings, as a mammal. We can escalate pretty easily. No one has to give us instructions on how to do that. De-escalation, this is something that is a learned skill. Are there a few people who are just naturally good at it? Yeah. By and large, no. And when we rely on things that have been measured, we can do things that are predictable. one of the gifts that I think being in this sector offers to people from instructors that are socially conscious, and I'd like to think that to some degree I am. I'm willing, absolutely willing, to not only concede the point, but to celebrate with workforces that we train. There are things that you're doing right now that are de-escalatory. You know that they are somewhere. You might just not know what it's called, what it does, and why it works. Good training raises the awareness of the student of precisely what it is. De-escalation is a far more sophisticated explanation than, well, I just treat someone with respect, if you want to understand what de-escalation is. But at the end of it, de-escalation could absolutely be described as that. I'm treating someone with respect, no matter what they're presenting. I'm treating someone with respect, no matter what they're doing. You're doing that because they deserve it? No, because I want to de-escalate them. That's why. Because that's my job. That's my responsibility. That's my calling. I'm doing that because I want to de-escalate them. That's the science. So, longer one today, but been delightful to see you here and see some comments. Hope you enjoyed this one. There's a lot out there on what animates people to anger and aggressive behavior, and I'd say to some degree a little less, but excuse me, not a small amount. Plenty of research on what de-escalates human beings. Particularly, we find a lot of value in reviewing research about things that stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, things that regard self-regulation. And if you use those search terms in research, you'll begin to get the picture of how much this is being studied. It's important, especially if you have professional responsibilities, or if you're just out in the world and you're just tired of having to engage a world that's constantly angry and getting angrier. First order of business is de-escalate self, and then immediately thereafter, de-escalate another human being. Thanks for joining us on this live. We'll see you Thursday at 4 p.m. Take good care.
More that you can lean into your own personal discomfort, say what needs to be said in a non-offensive way, the more you make the world a better place.